of December blanketed the small town of Maplewood, Ohio in a hushed, white calm. Outside, the world sparkled under a soft layer of snow, but inside the little blue house on Pine Street, silence loomed heavy, thicker than the drifts piled against the window. Emily Carson sat at the kitchen table, her fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The steam was gone, just as warmth had dissipated from her life, leaving her staring into the empty mug as if it might reveal the answers she desperately sought. At 42, she was a mother, a widow, and, though she never spoke it aloud, a woman weary from holding everything together with fraying threads. Her son, Jacob, had left home 2 years ago at 19, chasing dreams in the sun-baked streets of Los Angeles. He hadn't returned since, and the silence between them had become a chasm. Calls had turned rare, texts a distant memory. Each time her phone buzzed, hope soared in her chest like a bird taking flight, only to crash back to earth when it was just a reminder of another bill or a neighbor asking about the church bake sale. On the fridge, a photo clung to the surface, pinned by a magnet shaped like a heart. In it, Jacob beamed in his football jersey, his arm thrown around the shoulders of his father, Daniel, who had left him too soon. That was before the heart attack, before the fractures in their lives became too deep to ignore. Emily whispered, "You'd know what to do, Danny." Her voice was barely a murmur, lost to the air thick with memories. But the photo, of course, offered no answers. The silence shattered with a sharp knock at the door. Mrs. Whitaker, the elderly neighbor, stood bundled in her coat, a small package cradled in her arms. "This was in my mailbox by mistake. Looks like it's for you, dear," she said, her voice kind but edged with concern. Emily thanked her and closed the door, her heart racing as she turned the envelope over in her hands. The return address read, Los Angeles, California. Tremors ran through her fingers as she recognized the handwriting. It wasn't Jacob's. The letter was from a hospital. A social worker wrote that Jacob had been admitted after a construction site accident. He wasn't in critical danger, but he lacked insurance and close contacts, except for the number Emily had once hastily scribbled on an emergency contact card. Her heart pounded against her chest. Relief that he was alive battled fear. The silence of the past 2 years now bore a crack, a chance for words, even if they trickled through sterile hospital walls. That evening, her best friend Carla visited, concern etched across her face. Carla had been her rock since Daniel's death, a steady presence in the storm that had become Emily's life. "You have to go to him," Carla urged, her voice steady. "This is your son. Whatever happened, you can't let pride or hurt or distance win." Emily's throat constricted. "What if he doesn't want me there? What if I'm just in his way?" Carla softened, placing a hand on Emily's arm. "Then at least you'll know you tried." That night, Emily pulled an old shoebox from under her bed, filled with letters Jacob had written to her as a boy, crayon-scribbled notes saying, "I love you, Mom," on scraps of torn paper. Birthday cards with misspellings that had always made her smile. She clutched them like fragile relics, tears falling onto the faded ink. The next morning, she booked a bus ticket. Los Angeles was an overwhelming whirlwind. Skyscrapers loomed like glass mountains against the sky. Traffic roared like a restless sea, and the air was thick with exhaust and ambition. Emily grasped her purse tightly, feeling small and insignificant in a city that never seemed to stop. At the hospital, she hesitated outside the door, her heart strumming a frantic rhythm in her chest, before finally summoning the courage to push it open. Jacob lay in the bed, a cast on his leg and bruises mottling his arms. His once messy brown hair was now cropped short, his face leaner and etched with shadows of adulthood. He looked up and froze. "Mom?" His voice was a whisper, hoarse and uncertain, tinged with guilt. Emily fought back tears. "Hi, sweetheart," she managed, her voice a fragile thread. For a long, painful moment, neither spoke. Finally, Jacob looked away, his expression shifting like the clouds above. "You didn't have to come." "I did," she whispered. "You're my son." The silence stretched again, this time heavy with unspoken years. Emily yearned to ask 1,000 questions. Why didn't you call? Were you safe? Did you eat? Did you hate me? But none of those words found their way to her lips. Instead, she reached for his hand, and he didn't pull away. Over the following days, Emily visited Jacob daily. She brought homemade meals, tidied the small hospital room, and tried to bridge the distance with the little things, a comforting touch, a shared smile. Jacob was guarded at first, speaking in short sentences, his eyes glued to the television, avoiding the heavier topics that loomed like dark clouds. But gradually, the walls that separated them began to thin. One night, when the city lights spilled through the blinds, Jacob finally confessed, "I didn't want to come back home after Dad died. It felt like everything was broken, and I couldn't fix it." Emily's heart ached. "You don't have to fix it, Jacob. That wasn't your job. It was never your job." He shook his head, tears pooling in his eyes. "I felt like I let you down. I quit college, wasted money, chased dreams I couldn't catch. I thought, maybe if I stayed away, you wouldn't be disappointed." Gently, Emily cupped his face, just as she had when he was little. "You are my son, not my mistake, not my disappointment, just my son. That's enough." For the first time in years, Jacob allowed himself to cry, his shoulders shaking as sobs escaped him. A week later, Jacob was discharged. Though he couldn't work yet, Emily found a small Airbnb nearby where they could both breathe and begin to heal. They spent time together, cooking cheap meals, walking slowly with his crutches, rekindling the pieces of their relationship in conversations filled with both pain and solace. One evening, Jacob handed Emily a folded piece of paper. "I wrote this a few weeks ago. I never sent it. Guess I was too afraid. But I want you to read it now." It was a letter. "Dear Mom, I don't know if you'd even read this if it reached you. I've messed up more than I can count. I keep thinking about Dad, about the night we lost him, and how I saw you cry in the kitchen when you thought I was asleep. I wanted to be strong for you, but instead, I ran away. I don't call because I don't know what to say. I don't come home because I don't know if home wants me anymore. But I miss you. Every single day. Love, Jacob." Emily pressed the paper to her chest, sobbing as the words sank in. "Home will always want you," she whispered, her heart swelling with a love that transcended the years of silence. Months later, when Jacob's leg had healed, Emily convinced him to come back to Maplewood for a visit. At first, he resisted. "It won't feel the same without Dad." Emily nodded, understanding the weight of that truth. "No, it won't, but it'll still be ours." Back on Pine Street, the neighbors welcomed Jacob with warmth. Mrs. Whitaker baked a pie, and Carla hugged him until laughter bubbled from his lips, breaking the last of the tension. Slowly, the house that had felt like a tomb began to breathe once more. Emily cooked Jacob's favorite meals, and they watched old football games on TV, reliving memories and building new ones. Jacob even visited his father's grave, leaving behind a folded note he didn't let anyone read. The silence that once weighed down the blue house evaporated, replaced by conversations, laughter, and the comforting noise of family rediscovered. Years later, after Jacob found steady work and built a new life closer to home, Emily opened the shoebox of old letters again. She added one more, Jacob's letter from Los Angeles, the one that began their healing. It was, she decided, the most important letter she'd ever received. And though she knew life would always hold loss, distance, and pain, Emily also knew something else. Love, when held onto, could survive even the longest silence.